Yo, what's up, internet? It's Spose. Welcome to the third episode of my podcast. The Celtics streak is over, but my theme song is undefeated. Yo, so welcome to the third episode of the Spose podcast. I am Spose. If you don't know me, I'm a rapper from Maine, and I still have no sponsors. The first thing I'm going to do on this podcast is I'm going to review an album in 1 minute, which is what I always do. This week I'm going to review the album No Dope on Sundays by Sci-Hi the Prince. So I'm going to have Siri set a timer for 1 minute. Hang on, I took some notes because this is like a length. I got a lot to try to squeeze into a minute here. I just listened to this shit. Siri, set a timer for 1 minute.
Okay, your timer is set for 1 minute.
Okay, here we go. So No Dope on Sundays by Sci-Hi the Prince is dope. It's smart, high level, super like luxury, barsy street rap album. He's from East Atlanta, but it's not mumble rap. It is not like Future. It's not like any sort of mumble rap out right now. It's fucking bars. I put down some bars that stood out to me. He's like, I've been stabbed in the back more times than Paul Pierce. Back and forth to Michigan. I want my grands rapid. I'm a clear black knight like Warren G has. Like all sorts of barsy fucking shit. Pardon me. My closest comparison could be like Obi Trice or something. You know, it's like the dude on the label, like Good Music. Oh, hang on, I just got a text. Oh no, I only got 10 seconds. So, yo, check out the Sci-Hi the Prince album. It's actually fucking good. Towards the end of the album, it turns really jazzy, really unique. The song Free. Check it out. Sci-Hi the Prince, No Dope on Sundays. Man, 1 minute. So, my guest this week is the host of possibly my current favorite podcast. I'm honored to have on the show a smart person, a Kanye fan, a dad, and the host of the Dissect podcast, Cole Cuchna. Welcome to the Spose podcast.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to have you. We've communicated obviously on email, but like I'm just a stan of your show. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure Kanye obviously is what lured me to your show, but to explain your show to somebody who hasn't heard it, basically, if I was to put it in my own, or you describe it.
Yeah, I mean, the most accurate way is just the tagline of the show, which is long form music analysis broken into short digestible episodes. So the premise is that I pick one album per season and dissect one song per episode to give a deep dive on one album, but in a format that's, I hope, easily consumable.
Yeah, I was looking at your website. You have a really great description of what it is, or like a tagline. You said, because great art deserves more than a swipe, which like just hits home, you know, as somebody who, you know, you might see a song on Twitter that you never even click on, and that's it. You swipe and you move on. So to give art its just due, I think your podcast does a great job with. What lured me to your podcast was Kanye West. I am a unapologetic, very vocal Kanye stan. And I feel like I've unfriended more people on Facebook over Kanye than like politics.
Yeah.
But you're actually a fan of mine on Twitter had said, "Hey man, I know you love Kanye. Did you hear this?" And I tuned into your podcast, and it was right when you had started your second season, which is you're dissecting My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye. And just for listeners out there, the first season is To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick, which is also fucking amazing. But the first episode, you did a couple kind of prologue episodes to explain Kanye, and then you launched into the album. And the first song on that being Dark Fantasy. And you, right out the gate, pulled out that the spoken word Nicki Minaj intro was pulled from Roald Dahl, an adaptation of Roald Dahl, and you launch into the theme of the album, which is the trappings and the dark side of fame. And could you talk about like when you discovered that? Like that's like a crazy factoid to me, like that intro, the Roald Dahl connection.
Yeah, I can't remember where I read it. I read it somewhere, just doing research on the album. I can't remember when, but or where I found that actual fact out. But Yeah, I mean, just the theme of kind of the dark side of celebrity to me was kind of a natural bridge from season one of Dissect, where Kendrick ends the album basically with Mortal Man, kind of predicting his own destiny, which is I'm going to be very famous, and I know what comes along with fame, which is an inevitable downfall. And then here we have Kanye West basically living that reality, you know, 6 years before, but essentially the whole Taylor Swift thing happened and his celebrity was, in jeopardy. And so I just thought that was kind of a natural bridge, or a nice kind of bridge between the seasons, and just kind of seeing what we can learn from Kanye and his experience.
Yeah, I've made it probably 4 or 5 episodes into your Kendrick analysis as well, and it's just incredible. I mean, if you're a fan of these albums of To Pimp a Butterfly or My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, I can't recommend listening to these enough, because you pick up on there's a lot of things I've picked up on as I've listened to the songs, but you really dive into kind of like the just all the details that the average listener is not going to pick up on. Also, into the thematic string that ties these albums together. And obviously, the albums you picked were not an accident. These are very well themed albums. What was I going to say? Is this your first podcast?
Yeah. Dissect is the first podcast. Yeah.
Wow, crazy. One of the things I noticed about your podcast is, just as I start doing podcasts myself, you have no ads. You do a Patreon. Can you explain that decision?
Well, let's see. I guess so. I didn't start the podcast to make money. It was kind of a selfish choice for me. The whole great art deserves more than a swipe. That was essentially me talking to myself, because I went to school for music composition in college, and in college you sit with one piece of music for a long time and you study it. And when I graduated, I was like missing that in my life. So, and then I found myself just like swiping through my phone every night and then just kind of feeling kind of empty. So the premise of Dissect was really to provide a structure for myself, to like give myself an excuse to actually sit down with these works of great art, and actually put the time in. So
when you studied music composition in college, did you study modern pop music, or did the history of music, or what did you guys analyze in class?
It was all classical music. So, starting from Gregorian chant all the way to contemporary classical music.
Do you feel like that informs your understanding of when you analyze these albums a lot? I see you do pull back, and you have I think most recently in the Runaway episode, the 2-part episode, you really hearkened back to some kind of older traditions. Pardon me, I forget exactly what, but I think your college education, you would say, informs your understanding of these modern albums.
Yeah, and that was kind of the premise or one of the premises of the show was, here's an art form that I think is really valid, but also underappreciated, especially in a kind of as an academic approach with, hip hop. So part of this was an experiment to, can this music hold up to the same kind of analysis that you would apply to a Beethoven piece, for instance? I quickly realized unequivocally yes. And and then it became like the motivation to do the show, or one of the motivations to do the show was, let's elevate hip hop as an art form. It's still a very young genre. People don't take it as seriously as an art form that I believe that it should be considered. So this is, my part in kind of elevating the art form and showing that it is a very valid art form.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously I agree. And I think it's I was in Scotland recently. I did a UK tour, and I was driving through Scotland, and it was the week you put out the Runaway episode. I think maybe I don't know if you released it in 2 parts the same week or whatever, but I was listening to you break it down, and my buddy Goddamn Chan, who's my DJ and my producer, was in the car with me. We're driving on the right side of the car, left side of the road, and we're listening to the podcast. And he's like I'm so indoctrinated to your podcast that this shit doesn't strike me as weird, and you're breaking down lines I sent this bitch a picture of my dick, and in this analytical, very like academic breakdown, and he was like blown away. He just couldn't believe, you saying some of these phrases, and I could tell he was like getting skeptical, and I was like, oh man, I know what I'm gonna play for him. And I switch over to because it's like once he's hooked, he'll really enjoy it, and it won't even phase him. And so I switched over to the Devil in a New Dress episode.
Oh, got it.
Which I knew, just because I knew it would hook him, and because you break down the samples. I think is Bink produced that.
Yeah,
and so you break down the chops. You're talking about like the records it samples. I forget if it was Otis Redding or something along those lines, and you're talking about like the chops, like where specifically where the chops were, and you break down the beat piece by piece. Do you recreate a lot of like you recreated a couple compositions throughout the show? I know you've pulled out the piano, but this just blew his mind. He was blown away, and so we ended up listening to a couple episodes. But talk about just the breaking down of the samples on these albums, and is that difficult, or do you how much time does that take, and the playing of that, is that you?
Yeah, all the recreations are, I want to say most of them are, just me using piano or just like MIDI software. And that to me is like my favorite part, just to kind of see
so good.
how these things are created. And I think, that's, people think about lyrics a lot, but if you're not a musician, I'm not sure how much you're thinking about the music and how it's constructed. So I think people really appreciate that aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great resources out there. I mean, I think of mostly what I do is like, it's a lot of research and I'm organizing a lot of information, but I'm pulling from various sources also. Like there's a great website called whosampled.com.
Shout out to whosampled.com.
Yeah.
We've all been there. That's one of the most amazing things about it is as I'm a rapper / producer, all my, I got friends who, are digging in the crates, and like everybody uses Who Sampled, but like you're pulling up like the exact moment of the sample, which I think is cool. But yeah, go on. Who Sampled?
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, some of it's me, some of it's resources. But again, that's kind of my favorite thing to do is as much as I can with the resources that I have. I mean, it'd be great to have stems and stuff, but to kind of see, I mean, especially with the Kanye album, it's like he had Mike Dean and he had Jess Basker, or these people are like legit musicians in the, pure form of like, they know how to play instruments, they know theory. So to discover some of these kind of hidden just harmonic uses where they actually reflect what's being said on the song. Like for instance, Dark Fantasy, Can We Get Much Higher? The chord progression is doing just that. It's a four chords that go higher and higher and higher. So to kind of, I don't know what people think. Like I don't listen to music and just pick up those things like on first hearing. Like it takes sitting down. I think it would take any musician to sit down and spend the time to figure out those fine details. And again, that's kind of my favorite part of it.
One of the coolest things for me was in that first episode, Dark Fantasy, where you talk about how the notes resolve back to the root note, and it gives the listener a sense of resolve and the relief they've been looking for from the chords emotionally. And then you talk about when the verse starts, it never comes, like the resolution never comes.
Yeah,
I forget. I'm putting this in layman's terms.
Yeah.
I apologize, but you. So I thought that was cool, but then we bring this up again later in the album. I'm just like such a stan of the podcast. So like in the Devil in a New Dress, episode, you talk about how it's this loop and it never resolves, but the big resolve is the first note of Runaway, which is just so amazing to me. And there's a lot of this that seemed coincidental to me, just as like a casual listener. But as I listen to the podcast, it doesn't seem coincidental. It's like Kanye knows that resolution there.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of my, that's like the first question I'd ask a lot of these guys if I ever got to talk to them was, these details. They're just like, it's one thing to like maybe stumble upon one and it worked and that's cool, but there's so many of them that I'm just like, there's no way it's not constructed. There's just too many of them. So yeah, I mean, that was actually the one you just picked out, the Devil in a New Dress to Runaway transition. Like
Yeah.
that was like, when I figured that out, I was like jumping around my house. I was like so stoked.
That's so great. That's so dope. Yeah, I mean, and as a listener, it was just like, and just when you pointed it out, it was just, I literally paused your podcast and went and played the songs back to back and was like, oh my God, you know, it's just, I was just so stoked about it. A couple other things validated my kind of like, because, you know, I'll be driving around and I don't know about, you're married, you have a wife, correct?
Yeah.
Like, so my wife and I, you know, we got kids, we're always driving around, but we, you know, we love rap music and all types of music, but I remember just like raving to my wife in the car I was like, listen to in Power, Kanye goes, I look down at my diamond encrusted piece, but it's a play on words to mean dying man encrusted piece, like a Jesus piece. And I'm like, my wife's like, all right. My wife's like, yeah, all right. And I was like, and he says so excited, but it loops and it says suicide. So it's like these things you saying it validated for me, but you took them to a whole nother level because the diamond encrusted piece, you came up with a third analysis, which is it was a looking down at I imagined a piece like a necklace, but you pointed out piece is a synonym for a gun. So imagine he's looking down at a gun to kill himself at the pressure of all this, the fame building up. And I thought that was so cool for me. And also it reminded me of Eminem. I don't know if you ever listened to much Eminem, but Encore, which was an awful album. Like he fucking like kills the audience and himself, I think, at the end of the album. And I think it's just like something that really, it was such an evocative image that you painted there. It made me wonder, in the way you write this, I imagine you write all this down, right? When you're reading the podcast. It's not freestyle, like off the top, because it's so articulate. But could you talk about that song Power a little? I feel like that was one of the crux episodes for just your analysis was so awesome.
Yeah, I mean that particular moment is, you know, actually I think the whole album kind of is centered on that moment where he talks about the handgun, and then you pointed out the suicide thing, which is then followed by all of the lights interlude, which is like that piano and cello, which sounds like to me funeral music. Yep. And that's kind of when the album takes a turn. So I've heard it described as like when the tornado comes, he gets Dorothy and she's transported to the Wizard of Oz. It's kind of that moment in the album.
That's great.
Because that's when, you know, all the lights, which is like the bright lights after death, come in. And then it just kind of, I think of the album as like this spiral, like a downward spiral. And that's kind of when it starts to really twist, and you get Monster and you get So Appalled, and things just get a little darker. You get a Hell of a Life. Like, so yeah, the power, I think, just is like that hinge of the entire album. The first three songs are kind of set up. It kind of climaxes with Power, and then things just kind of fall off a cliff, and then, you know, end with Lost in the World, which I think about as like the eye of the storm, like this moment of clarity with just like chaos around him. But yeah, it all begins with Power, I would say. And that song, I always loved that song, but there's just, I mean, lyrically, I think that's got to be in his top 10 at least. It's just so well constructed, and I know he has a team helping him with this stuff. But that, I mean, every word I feel like in that song is just carefully calculated. Yeah, it's just incredible, and then the production obviously is just like next level.
Yeah, your analysis of that production was really cool. You talk about you play all the samples that pull that together. But yeah, that song and your analysis of that song was just that song is just clearly the crux of that album, you know. And that was I want to say that was the first like record off the album that came out in that era.
Yeah,
like, I think Power was the first thing we heard
after Taylor Swift, basically. Yeah.
After Taylor Swift, yeah, and it was man, and it's still to this day is one of those super powerful songs. I mean, I literally have a moment in my rap set now where it just goes to that clap intro as a build to the next song. It's just
nice.
It's iconic. it's just iconic. But it really deals with this like like you said, like it all comes to a crash, you know, and a halt there. And that I think feels like a decent segue to something that really intrigued me. Um, Halfway through this season, I think you said you went on vacation with your family, and so in lieu of doing like a full episode, you did a story about something you had written about when you went to see Kanye at in Sacramento the night that he flipped out and ended the tour. When he was saying the stuff about Hillary or Trump and Beyonce and Jay-Z, and you really spun that into a really awesome thing about empathy. This is something that fucking pisses me off about like our society so much, and I'm so glad you addressed it, which is just that like we build up celebrities to tear them down, and most people wouldn't last fucking 10 minutes as Kim Kardashian, you know, and we just need to feel. What did you say? I wrote it down. You said let's see. I wrote something great down. You said, you wrote, it seems more than ever we revel in the failures and the downfall of our public figures. Social media all gives us all the opportunity to twist the knife. And beneath all the Photoshop and the designer clothes are real people. More than often, they've given us extraordinary gifts. Just recently, this dude, Lil Peep, died.
Yeah.
And so the internet, you know, again, comes for the celebrities after the fact. Could you talk a little about empathy and what you were getting across in that episode? Because it really struck a chord with me, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the concept of empathy a lot, and the reason I do is because I think it's a tangible solution to what is currently happening in our country, which is just a lot of division on both sides. And so I always kind of give the anecdote of like, my parents are very right-wing conservative, Trump supporters. I would imagine. I don't talk to them about it that much, but that is not what I believe politically.
Me either.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they're my parents, and I know they're beautiful people, and they gave me everything, and they're just great people. So that has helped me view people that I wouldn't necessarily agree politically with, or these things that basically cause division in our country right now. And empathy is basically the key, a starting point at least, and a solution towards just a conversation or just kind of neutralizing that division. I think the way that I think about it is that, I guess and then I guess I think about it in celebrity. That's another area where I think we lack empathy, because like you mentioned, we build people up and we just love to see them fall. And I don't know. I mean, Kanye West in particular has just given us so much. Like, do I agree with everything that he says or that he acts? Like, no, but I don't know. I don't know what he's going through. Like when I was watching him flip out in person, I was just like, is this guy okay? Like, I hope he's okay. Like, because that's someone that I admire that has given me so much. And I think we kind of forget that. And we kind of, once people turn celebrity, they come like, there's like this inherent dehumanization that comes along with it. And then all of a sudden you're viewing this person like a product, and like all you think about is what they give you. And I don't know, that's really dangerous. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot with, Kanye West in particular with this album is, I mean, because it's in our nature to idolize and stuff. And I get that, but how do we avoid the kind of pitfalls of doing that? And I think empathy is, again, the solution to that. It's just making sure that you're humanizing everyone and just remembering that there are real people behind these big productions of, just celebrity in general. So again, I think it's just empathy is a starting point for basically, in my mind, any conflict that might arise between two people.
I think it's awesome. Well, I think my favorite part about that is just that you attempt at a solution. you attempt it's because I feel like a lot of us kind of just accept that it's divided and there's no hope, and or you can get frustrated with it. But I think to look for a solution is admirable. So shout out to you for that. And just I really, obviously I'm like a Kanye stan, so I hate when people talk shit about Kanye.
Yeah.
But like, I can't even, I can't even like fathom what it's like to be under the scrutiny of like a Kim Kardashian or any sort of person who has cameras in their face when they're trying to eat dinner with their
Yeah.
kids. Can you
Yeah.
imagine? I'd be so pissed. I'd like, it's like when Kanye, when he, I don't know if he smashed the photographer's camera or whatever years ago, was like, fuck yeah, man, that's probably what I would do too if you're following me around with a camera. Come on.
Yeah, well, interesting on that. I was actually just watching something the other day about that actual incident, and that was he later on said, and of course this kind of stuff doesn't get the press, but he said that was that when that happened, he just got word that I think it was his grandfather was basically sick and was about to die, something along those lines. So like again, there's where empathy comes in. Like we see this image of him, not acting the best way, obviously, but again, there was a reason for it, and again that he's living with that every single day, and of course that's going to get to somebody after a while.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about this Lil Peep dude the other day, and actually the Chester Bennington from Linkin Park killing himself made me think about this too. Was especially striking when I listened to Lil Peep after he passed away, and I listened to some Linkin Park songs after he died. These dudes are talking about dying, all the time in the music. And Kanye, as you analyze My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, is talking about dying and suicide all the time. And so I think not to say it's like a byproduct of celebrity to be suicidal, but I think it's a lot of these people, they spell it out for us, and I think and we root for it and we buy it until it's too late, and then we dismiss it and move on.
Yeah, I mean that's actually something. I wrote a piece about Kendrick Lamar's Damn, and it was called Pray for Kendrick Lamar, because the first thing that struck me about that album was the ongoing refrain of nobody's praying for me.
And
the whole thing for me. Yeah, and it's just like I hear that, I spent so much time with To Pimp a Butterfly, and I got to obviously not know him as like personally, but I learned a lot about him, and a lot of that album was about predicting his new life of fame, and the whole thing was about him struggling with it. And then he comes out with the album saying ain't nobody praying for me, and there's someone dying in the beginning, like all these things. This is not to say that that's, I don't know.
No, but I think that's the price of fame for a lot of our favorite artists, is like they give it their all, and it's and I don't know I know you've speculated on Twitter what you plan to do for the third season. You don't, obviously, I don't know if you've come to any sort of decision, but some of the albums you've thrown out are Yeezus, Blonde by Frank Ocean. Did you consider Damn as well?
Yeah, Damn's definitely on the list. I haven't decided, but Damn will be a great one. Frank Ocean would be amazing. I think Flower Boy doesn't get enough attention, so I'm always shouting that out.
A lot of love for Flower Boy by Tyler, the Creator. Can you talk about that album real quick, just why you like it?
Yeah, I think given his history, I thought it was just a really interesting turn for him. And, the center of the album is where he kind of comes out as being gay. And to me in hip hop, I mean, it's kind of like when he came out, or, people are speculating he came out, it wasn't really a big deal, which I thought was really great, because 10 years ago in hip hop, that would have been like career ending, or could have been like the way that hip hop has come, just like it was definitely a little bit more like machismo and homophobic, just I would say 10 years ago or whatever. I mean, Kanye actually addressed that.
I was going to say, Kanye spoke about this.
Yeah, like I think it was probably about 10 years ago. So, that kind of...
Kanye changed the wardrobe, too. Kanye made it okay to be this. And I think it's really opened the doors for you know, and not to say hip hop was one of two things, or it was this style or that style, but for a while it was like there was pretty much you were this style or hip hop, or you were underground hip hop. You were mainstream,
Yeah.
and Kanye obviously bridged those two with. I took Freeway, put him on a song with Mos Def, like whatever. But like he really broke down a lot of the cultural and kind of like the boundaries that had been around hip hop, and possibly paved the way for something like a Tyler the Creator being able to come out, and it's not a thing. Like it's not even
Yeah.
like a thing. He's, you know, it's like fuck yeah, go Tyler, you know?
Yeah, which is great. And I do think Kanye had a lot to do with that. I know Tyler specifically always, you know, talks about Kanye as an influence, as like the biggest influence. And even, I mean, I always think back to like 808s, even like Kanye made it okay to sing. And now, I mean, now
there's Drake.
There's Drake. And I mean, it's hard to find a rapper that doesn't sing now. And I mean, again, 10 years ago, that just was not happening.
Yeah, I think Kanye's bravery in regards to you know, forging new directions musically, I think is one of the things that endears me to Kanye the most. I think obviously 808s, but Yeezus, I mean, I assume by the time Yeezus came out, you've been a Kanye fan all along, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't want to peg you as a Kanye fan, but I would assume from the music analysis, but but Yeezus, man, when I heard that shit, it just like blew my mind, and I was just again so excited. It's just so exciting being a fan of Kanye, and when I heard that, I actually listened to it the night it came out. Could you talk a little about Yeezus? It gets no love. People don't like Yeezus.
Oh, it's my favorite. It's my favorite Kanye record by far, actually.
Dude, okay, thank you. I'm in my safe place now.
Yeah, I know. It's always like a touchy subject.
Why? Why do you like Yeezus? Because I fucking love it.
You know, to say it's my favorite, that's a personal statement. I couldn't really argue that it is his best, although I could, you know, try very hard. But I think personally, I just love the sound of it. That's, you know, I come from like a somewhat rock background, and I also love electronic music, and I love minimalism. So like all those things kind of came to a head in that album. I also thought it was kind of like, I think back to like those kind of, they call them departure records of history, like Sgt. Pepper or
Kid A.
You know, Kid A from Radiohead. Yeah, exactly. Where here's a guy with the most influence in music who could very easily just kind of keep turning the wheel and doing what he's known to do, but yet he used his platform to, you know, take a risk to challenge his you know, massive audience and expose them to music that they probably would never have heard before or without him,
and completely changed the sound of me. Like literally all like pop music, all the new Taylor Swift records sound like Yeezus.
Yeah.
Just so influential. But to go back to your comment about minimalism, and eventually I wrote it down. We have to get back to Radiohead. But as far as minimalism, I'm sure you have read these articles or just like the interview, maybe I think it was with Rick Rubin, who obviously came in at the last minute to kind of strip Yeezus down. Is that your understanding? Like they were like Kanye had the myth from the readings of it is Kanye had this big massive album, and Rick or Kanye suggested to just strip it down to its bare elements, and I think it just came out so great in regards to that.
Yeah. I think Rick Rubin said he wasn't a producer, he was a reducer on Yeezus, which I think is a cool way to think about it. Yeah, from what I understand, it was just a kind of a wreck, not a wreck, but there was just no organization to it. And I think the anecdote was like, you know, there was like 3 hours of music, and there was, I can't remember, was it like 6 weeks or something to finish it, or maybe less? And, you know, Rick Rubin basically constructed the album. A lot of the songs like didn't have complete words or, you know, verses. And I think Kanye like went to Milan or something in the middle of all this, and then Rick Rubin was kind of freaking out. And then Kanye's like, you know, don't worry, I'm going to come back in the fourth quarter and give you Mike Jordan, give you 50 in the fourth quarter or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, that stuff's really interesting, but just the album itself is masterful. And it's weird because I feel like the pushback against it has kind of faded, and now it's just recently kind of, I don't know what, for whatever reason.
Up.
Yeah, exactly. Which is interesting. I would be kind of interested in kind of investigating that. But even like Vince Staples' new album, I don't know if that album happens without a Yeezus.
Yeah, no, great call. I think Vince Staples going on tour with the aforementioned Tyler the Creator. I just saw also.
Yeah, actually, tickets went on sale today, and they're coming to SAC, so I'm pretty.
Okay,
pretty
yeah,
stoked,
I've actually, I've been out to SAC a couple times. Shout out to Sacramento.
Yeah.
Years ago, I had I signed a major label deal with Republic Records, and for like 3 months, I was like flying around playing all these radio festivals before they dropped me. And like 2 of them were in Sacramento. I actually looked at it was, I think the radio stations were KDND and KBMB. Maybe I don't know if either of those are real, but either way, I'm playing with fucking like the New Boys. I don't know if you remember, and Train, and all these
Yeah.
And B.O.B. It was, and Mike Posner was always on those gigs.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
But I had a great time in Sac, so shout out to Sacramento. Are you a Kings fan? Or you're not really a basketball fan? Or?
No, I love basketball. Kings, I mean, I of course root for them. They're a hard team.
Bad time.
It's been a bad time for a while. Yeah.
And it's got to be especially heart-wrenching because the Golden State Warriors are so good.
Yeah.
Does that suck? Because they're pretty close.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like, I don't really have a favorite team.
You're not emotionally invested in the
I'm
game.
not. I just love basketball. That's why, as much as part of me wants to root against Golden State, they just play beautiful basketball, and it's just hard to hate that much when someone's playing at that level.
Yeah, they're amazing. The Boston Celtics, my favorite team, just handled them recently.
Oh yeah.
And but we looked ugly doing it. It was hard. They make it tough. They're most likely the champs again. But yeah, I just love fucking basketball too. I'm with you. Yeezus, before we wrap that up, you steered me in the direction of this other podcast you mentioned in your podcast called Watching the Throne.
Yeah.
And so this podcast is this very basically episode by episode, they break down like Kanye's entire catalog song by song. So
Yeah.
And so right away, you had referenced it on your podcast, and I looked at their episodes and I was like, well, let me look up some of my favorite Kanye songs and listen to those. So right away I click on Barry Bonds, right? This is one of my favorite Kanye songs. Every time this shit comes on, I'm just like, boom, 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 boom. I just can't get enough, and I know all those bars. I love Wayne's verse.
Yeah.
Love that beat. Right out the gate. They're like,
shit on it,
this
right?
is one of the they're like, this is one of the worst Kanye West songs. And then they go, everybody hates this song. And I was like, damn, I'm all alone. So then I couldn't bear to listen to them tear it apart. So I switch over. I'm like, all right, let me go some Yeezus. So I go to Guilt Trip. And they shit all over this song too, because I love Guilt Trip. I love that. I love like everything about that song. But I did actually end up listening to a bunch of episodes. Really great podcast.
Yeah.
I recommend checking it out if you're a Kanye stan. Lots of cool analysis of a lot of songs. Obviously, you're only covering one album, so a lot of the rest of Kanye's catalog on there. But I just felt like such, because you feel alone as a Kanye fan anyway. So I felt more alone. I was like,
yeah.
I was like the kid at the Pablo movie theater premiere sitting by himself like in the front.
Yeah.
Did you go to that? Did you go see that?
No, I didn't. They didn't. I don't think they had one in Sacramento.
They skipped Sac?
I think so.
They had one in Maine.
I think I think it was in San Francisco, which I was probably working or something.
Okay. Yeah. I went. It was there was one theater in Brunswick, Maine, and I went alone because I don't know any it's about 45 minutes from my house. I drove up there. I remember it was a snowstorm, and I just remember being struck by how crazy it was being in that room. It almost felt like back in the day, like buying CDs and like listening to it with your friends. It was like the first time I've been in a room with everybody just there for the same reason, to see something for the first time. And not like tweet about it. Like nobody had their phones out. It was like we were just watching it, and then Chance's verse comes in on. Obviously we wait an hour past when it was supposed to start, and I'm texting my wife. I'm like, hasn't started yet. I'm definitely going to be home for dinner. Sure enough, I was not home for dinner. But I remember Chance's verse comes in on Ultra Light Beam, and everybody just turns to each other. We're like trying to right away the first word, and we're like, it's Chance.
Yeah.
Because there was no pre-moment. We didn't know Kanye and Chance were even like,
Yeah.
you know, we knew Kanye was a influence of Chance, but that was just such a cool experience, and it made me hope more artists do something like that, just to be in the room with like-minded people, not like the whole internet shitting on like the live broadcast or whatever. Was cool. It was a cool music moment for me.
Yeah, I mean that's something that maybe he doesn't get enough credit for. Like even thinking about the Yeezus release where he was projecting the video for
on the side of buildings.
Yeah, which is, you know, was awesome. And then yeah, again he has, you know, a movie theater premiere of his album, which is also a fashion show at Madison Square Garden. Like who's
entirely
who's doing that?
unprecedented.
It's crazy. I mean, and that's a creative way to kind of counter the music, like the shift in music consumption, where it's like everyone's kind of just streaming on their phone, and it's not really this community experience, except for a concert or whatever. But here's an album premiere, and it kind of reminded me of the days where you'd go and wait, you know, at midnight for a new album release at your favorite record store, which I used to do back in the day.
You're only going to meet people who love.
Exactly.
Or almost even more so like if like one of your favorite artists is like signing CDs.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the people you meet in line there are like, I remember I was a real big fan of the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah.
Growing up, I'm 32, so I was, you know, in 96 I was, you know, 11.
Yeah.
And so I'm a diehard Pumpkins fan, and I remember skipping school and like with permission from my mom, because she knew Pumpkins was life at this moment. I remember skipping school in 8th grade to go sit in line. And these people I met, I was like, oh my, they're all way older than us, but we were all like, oh my God, you guys love the Pumpkins too. And that's what that Kanye moment felt like for me, man. It was really awesome to be amongst non-haters, you know, to be unjudged and be part of something. And also to experience an album without the noise of social media happening concurrently, because it's like Yeezus came out at midnight, but then everybody gets to offer their opinion.
Yeah, and I think didn't it leak too a little bit before, which I hate.
I don't know. I'm actually, I think it did leak, and I specifically I'm like a stubborn. Yeah. I remember a buddy texted me. It was like, "Did you hear it?" And I was like, "I'm not listening until midnight." You know.
Yeah, I did that with Damn too. It leaked like I think a little bit earlier in the day or whatever, and it ended up not being the full version. So you just never know.
Even To Pimp a Butterfly release, I remember it was like the edited version or something came out first at like 9 a.m. or something, and then they couldn't get the regular version up till an hour later. But, which brings us to the release of The Life of Pablo, if we could talk about it for a second. I've seen articles where it's dubbed like the worst album release of all time because mainly because it was released, then it like wasn't out on Tidal yet, and then it was only out on Tidal, and then they was changing songs, and Chance is getting him to add this record.
Yeah.
I would argue do you think this is the worst release of all time, or do you think it's genius because every time he does anything to the album, it's a news article?
Well, you know, it made more like I didn't know what to think about it at the time. Now, in retrospect, it just makes so much sense, and I don't know if it was calculated or it was just a reflection of like his life at the time. But you know, Life of Pablo he stated it was like a living, breathing album, and he was adding on to it like months later. He was fixing things months later, which to me is just like a really kind of cool concept. Because you have the capability of doing that now. You don't release things on CD; they're just up streaming. So they're kind of still alive in that way. So, and then everything that led up to it kind of fed into that same concept of just like we were seeing the album being created. You know, he was sharing the track list and then changing the track list and then tweeting this and tweeting that, and it was just kind of like in the moment I was definitely like, "What is going on with this guy?" But now in retrospect, I'm like, well, that could have just been his kind of plan all along, like, or it was happening and then he took advantage of it. Either one, because it was definitely clear at some point that it became this thing that was like this. It was a very transparent process, and it was like this, a breathing album basically.
So I'm completely with you on that. I just immediately I thought of CDs. I'm like, oh, it's not in my car. Like he can change it.
Yeah.
Right now, he could change it tomorrow, and I just think I think it's inevitable that some artist does an album like that. that it's like it's constantly changing. Every week it's going to change, and if you didn't hear it last week, you're never going to hear it, or you got to go find the rip on YouTube or something, you know.
And I was actually hoping Drake was going to do that, like by calling his album a playlist, which just ended up being a play, like just an album. I don't know what a playlist. I don't get it still, but
yeah, strange term. But yeah, I
did
agree.
A playlist, yeah, you could. I mean, an artist could essentially throw up B-side tracks here and there. Like you could just have this thing that you can just share stuff on, which I don't know why no one's doing that.
I know specifically just from my own like releasing of music. Like I asked, actually the most recent record I put out, I made this album in 24 hours, so I had to put it out like the next week, right? And so I just to release digitally, Spotify, iTunes, and everything. And at the last minute, I was like, fuck, I hate the track list. I want to change it. So in order to do that through my distributor, who I think has at least decent pull, like emails people at iTunes to talk to them, they were like, yeah, you got to pull the whole album down and then re-put it up and you lose all the stats. So I think maybe there's some sort of infrastructure thing they got to change first.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense.
I think we're about to have an appearance from the sponsorship. My sponsors, the Sanford Fire Department, which goes by. My office is like right on a corner, like in this city. So last week it was like I was doing a podcast. It was like 3 times in the fucking episode the fire department came by. Nice. Well, I think they ended up being a pretty memorable part of the show. Has Kanye heard the podcast?
I doubt it. I don't know, but I would doubt it.
Have you heard from anybody? Like, I just feel like one of those dudes, like, you know, is Barber Iben or something, heard this shit and was like, yo, yeah, you got to hear this shit.
I've heard some people like told me some of the producers that worked on Pablo had heard of it or had listened to it. And I know like some people in TDE's camp I heard listened to the first season, knew about the first season, but I mean, I don't know. It's all
fucking dope. So cool. Well, it's just cool because I mean you're a fan of it, and it's got to be validating. You know, just to get the love. Am I wrong that the podcast had an audience, but it really picked up on the second season?
Yeah, definitely.
Talk about that and talk about just like the evolution of the podcast, just reception wise.
Yeah, I mean it's been surprising. I never thought it would get this big, or at least initially when I conceptualized it, I wasn't even thinking about an audience that much. So it's been all very pleasant surprise. I think I kind of got lucky in terms of, you know, podcasting is becoming very popular now, and people are just looking for new stuff. And yeah, I think it's kind of gratifying knowing that people are still willing to sit through this kind of analysis, you know. That's something I didn't know people would be interested in, or that maybe they would get bored or find it dry. But, you know, I think people that are into it get really into it for that reason, because it's kind of filling this void of just so much content. And a lot of it's just like surface level. You don't really get to go deep into anything. So I think it's kind of like a breath of fresh air type thing. So it's been really cool. I mean, it's cool for me personally, but then knowing that there's still space in our culture for this kind of stuff, is really, really cool.
Yeah, I think it's a vote of confidence for our society that people have that people want long form analysis of shit, you know, and rather than 140 or 280 character analysis. Do you play music? You played music, right?
Yeah, I've been playing music maybe over 15 years now. I was in bands. And
you making any currently?
No. I mean, I don't have time. I work full time, and then I do the podcast at night, and I have a wife and daughter, so there's 24 hours there. It's it's like it's fine. No, Dissect is creative for me. It's a form of creation. That's really all that matters.
Yeah, that's cool. I have 4 children, so I have zero time. But thankfully, my wife teaches 5th grade. So every Monday and Friday, I watch the kids all day. And then when she gets home, I go to work. So I've been doing podcasts on Friday nights and able to get my creative time in and not go crazy. you talked about a history or you just kind of said you came up on rock music. Like, what was some of your favorite bands?
Depends on how far back, I guess. Like high school, I was definitely like, I don't know. I listened to like Misfits, and
Yep.
I mean, I went through a lot of phases. I was also listening to like No Limit at that time. So it's like, I like,
Yeah, well, I think in American society, it's tough to not grow up on rock and rap.
yeah, exactly. Well, nowadays, rock is kind of, I don't,
Rock is rap.
yeah,
Rest
exactly.
in peace, Lil Peep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I was that kind of music, and then kind of when in my early 20s, I really gravitated towards people like Radiohead, um, and they're kind
Love
of,
Radiohead.
yeah. I mean, they're just, yeah, amazing. I can go on all day about them. And then when I went to
Would
college,
you ever
oh, good.
go ahead? Go ahead.
When I went to college, and I was really, really deep into classical music. So 3 years of my life was just really primarily listening to classical music.
Wild. That's cool. That's fucking awesome though. I wish I had the classical background to apply. But Radiohead, we've now mentioned several times. Radiohead's one of my favorite bands too. Seen them a couple times. Just been a diehard fan since OK Computer. I guess I kind of knew him casually previous to that. Would you ever break down a rock album on Dissect? I assume you probably would.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do either Kid A or In Rainbows. I think either of those, or any other albums really, but I think those two, in terms of what they did for, culturally, I think are super interesting. Kid A obviously was like this huge 180 from what everything that they were doing, and then In Rainbows was, the way that they released it, but for the time,
So incredible.
yeah, which was amazing, and brings up all the kind of stuff we're still dealing with now in the music industry. And plus, that's just an incredible album, and it kind of shows. I think that's their most complete album in terms of like sonically. It gives you K-Day, it gives you OK Computer. It's kind of this like really nice, homogenous, accumulation of all the sounds that they've kind of experimented with in their career.
But wrapped up in a tight little box. There's only 10 songs.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I
so
love about
it's
it.
so
Yeah.
concise and perfect.
That's
Yeah,
why I
yeah,
love. That's why I love Yeezus too. Like I love short albums
yes,
like that. Like let give me
yes.
the meat.
Yeah, don't give me the bullshit. It's like so actually before I brought you on this podcast, I do beginning of every podcast I review an album in 1 minute. So today I reviewed the Sci-Hi the Prince album.
Oh, sick. Yeah, I was listening to that today.
And, dude, it's fucking good.
It is.
And but I admit I came into it with a bias against Sci-Hi the Prince. They're like, oh, I already know what I'm getting from Sci-Hi. It's not good, it's gonna be good bars, but forgettable. But this album's really good, and especially towards the end of it, the instrumentation gets really jazzy, really minimalist, really cool, reminiscent of To Pimp a Butterfly almost. And so why did I say, oh, because I went into the album, looked at the track list. I was like, oh, 15 songs, too long.
Yeah,
I was like, screw this. Like, give me that Pusha T, My Name is My Name,
dude.
10 songs.
Yeah, I love that album. Yeah.
I love that album too. A song that I was a big Clips fan also. And I think Hell Hath No Fury might be 10 songs too. But I think there's something to be said about a concise statement, especially, Yeezus, In Rainbows, possibly the two best examples ever.
Yeah. I mean, well, Twisted Fantasy actually doesn't have that many songs on it.
Yeah, true.
It's like,
it just seems long because of those posse cuts.
That's the thing. The average duration, I think I calculated, it's like 5.5 minutes. So not a lot of songs, but they're definitely massive songs.
What was I gonna say? So Rady, I'd love to hear your analysis of Kid A. I've always some felt very like I know that album came out in 2000, but maybe I read this theory somewhere that it's like OK Computer symbolizing like the, obviously there's a lot to that album, but like symbolizing like the 1997 internet, technology boom. And then Kid A is like when it all exploded and 9/11 happened and it falls in on itself, even though 9/11 happened after Kid A. Like it just seemed like a real, in that respect, like so appropriate for the times.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it in the context of what was going on in that, yeah. But yeah,
or even on Kid A, even like the national anthem into I think How to Disappear.
Oh God,
It's
yeah,
like it builds to a crescendo,
yeah,
and then here's like the murmurings from the swamp, like humanity come back to life or something. Um, can we talk about Only One by Kanye West?
yeah, definitely.
This is one of my favorite songs. And this song is another thing like Yeezus that got kind of like universally panned by like people when
Did it
it
really?
came out. This song just like it made me cry. Like it made me cry. I listened to it the next day in the car after I'd listened to it a couple of times. This is just like to me, one of the most incredible songs. And it'll always break my heart that it didn't make it on The Life of Pablo, even though Pablo already had 37 songs.
Yeah, I always kind of wondered why. I mean, I get it now, and especially knowing kind of the narrative of the album now too. But yeah, Only One is top 5 Kanye song for me.
Totally agreed.
Yeah,
Totally agreed.
which is, I mean, it's crazy too. It was apparently like a freestyle. That's Paul McCartney that's playing the keys, and it was kind of in the moment type of thing. And you can hear it. There's like parts where he is not saying words.
Yeah, and Kanye actually yeah, so if you don't know this song, listener, go check it out. It's Paul McCartney from the fucking Beatles playing the keys, and Kanye West and actually I think they released like some sort of press release, or it was like a note when the song came out, and it was like I remember it came out January 1st, and it was saying that it was like they just came to Kanye as the chords were playing, and he just freestyled this incredible song that is channeling his dead mother, rest in peace, Donda West, talking to his daughter, and it's just so incredibly like heartbreaking and uplifting at the same time. But I mean, I literally was like singing this to we had around that time had a daughter too. I actually had to give away my Yeezus tour tickets to my buddy Jeff Mayo, because my wife was super pregnant and I couldn't go, and so I remember singing our daughter Only One to get her to sleep, because it was like one of the, I was just, it had come out around that time. And it's just, that song just, to me, one of the truest testaments to how incredible Kanye West is, just as a musician, as an artist.
Yeah. That actually I have a similar story, because that my daughter was born in March of that same year, so it came out just a few months before, and it I can't really. I mean, I love the song, I know that, but it's so emotionally attached to my life at that time as well, so it just holds that extra special place. I tear up like literally every time I listen to it when he says. Good. Tell Nori about me over and over. I'm just like,
yeah, it's just, same, tell Nori about, I mean, so yeah, thank you for validating me on that. If you, off the top of your head, not final list, had to throw some other songs in your top 5 Kanye songs, what would yours be? To put you completely on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I really like I'm In It from Yeezus. That song just. I mean, of course, Runaway.
Yeah.
It's just, obviously. I don't know. It's hard because I'm like so in Twisted Fantasy right now. I was
gonna say you're that's fine. I mean, you name 2. That's adequate.
Yeah.
That's adequate.
I mean, I'm doing Lost in the World right now, and there's so many songs that I just I mean, I always like them, but then when I'm diving so deep, I just get this massive appreciation for them. And Lost in the World is like incredible. Like, oh, it's incredible.
Bon Iver singing on that.
Yeah.
I've always loved the contrast thing Kanye does, where he takes Hold My Liquor, for example, on Yeezus, where he has Chief Keef and Bon Iver, 2 people from opposite ends of what you would think would be the musical spectrum. But guess what? There's a lot of people who listen to both of those people, and it's only Kanye who's going to take the Nutella and mix it with the bologna, and somehow it tastes delicious,
Yeah.
And he's been doing it since the first album.
Yeah.
But obviously you see that a lot on Twisted Fantasy, but I've always just loved that taking 2 disparate things and putting them together. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think his greatest skill is obviously he's like genius when it comes to music, but him as a curator, I think, is kind of his biggest skill, because yeah, to put those people in the room together. Just know, I mean, who's done that? Who's doing that?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Well, now people, after he's invented this, it's a thing, but like nobody was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, and even it's hard to even think about someone that's doing it now, or if they're certainly not doing it as well. So that's a really hard skill, I feel like, or just talent, I guess, to do that. I think it's really difficult.
Well, it just shows like such a breadth of musical knowledge. But like Kanye also, like when you come into the game as like a producer flipping soul records, like he must have such an encyclopedic knowledge of music, so yeah. I guess it isn't too shocking that he would, be listening to all different types before other people and combining them. But that's always one of the things I love. I mean, even him and Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. Well, that's the, I mean, that particular example just kind of shows exactly what we're talking about. Like if All Day. So if you listen to the end of him whistling, that whistling is what the melody of that huge synthesizer is in the beginning. That's the whistle melody. And it's like, who's doing that? Like he literally took a, whistle song from Paul McCartney and made flipped it into
a stadium soccer anthem, like melody.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's always been one of my favorite things. I remember like, I remember trying to express to the people. I'm like, do you hear? It's Paul McCartney at the end of his song. Like, it's not, doing a rendition of the melody. But I always love that Paul says, I always love Kanye's use of other narrators to say the feeling he's trying to get across. For example, you talk about this Kid Cudi doing this on Gorgeous.
Yeah.
On All Day, it's like Paul McCartney's like, well, let me run to see who came undone or something. But it's like Paul McCartney's lyrics articulating Kanye's feeling. It's I just fucking love it.
Yeah.
Can't get enough. All right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much. I don't know if you got anything else you want to discuss. I think I covered all 70 questions I had for you.
No, yeah, that's great, dude.
Dude, thank you so much. So if you are a Kanye fan or not, or just a music fan, or you're a Kendrick fan, or you just like you miss breaking down albums, go check out the Dissect podcast. You can get it on I assume you can get it I listen to it on iTunes. I don't know where other people listen to it, but and you are on Twitter at Dissect Podcast.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I end every episode by debuting a new song. I don't know if I'm going to keep this trend up forever, but at least through episode 3, I'm going to put a new song at the end of every episode. This song is a fucking crazy song that I've been sitting on for a minute. I've actually played like snippets of it on Snapchat. It dates back to, I've had this song for like a year and a half, but like I couldn't find a place for it. It didn't belong on Good Luck With Your Life because I produced it, but the sample in it originally is my daughter's voice pitched like on top of itself like 3 times, and then I built the whole song around that. And shout out to KG Freeze, and shout out to my man Jared Wilbur from Too Late the Hero who makes a brief appearance on this record. This song's called That Info. And please go subscribe to the podcast if you haven't yet on iTunes, and tell your friends and tell your mom and tell your dad. Spose Podcast. Peace. Are turning, let's get on the furnace. I guess we got reason out here to be nervous. Coordinates calculated like they planned out the murder. They got me tracked like it's vocals is logos. Encryption is linked into photos, location and info on locals, constrictions, and clicked on a promo. I saw what you're thinking, it's over. I saw what you're thinking, it's over. I saw what you're thinking, it's over. They want the info, the info. The info, the info. The info, the info. The info, the info. The info, the info.
Let your guard down. Come and let me right back in. I know the real you. Give it to me now, give it to me now. Hey. I saw what you might have said. Worldwide in the spider web. You got a trail, a tail, or breadcrumbs, bites like bedbugs. Hold up. I saw what you might have said. Worldwide in the spider web. You got a trail, a tail, or breadcrumbs, bites like bedbugs. Hold up. I saw what you might have said. Worldwide in the spider web. Who you follow, what you borrow, who you swallow, and you gave us yesterday. You know we're coming for tomorrow. The phone and the Kindle. It's really that simple. The character symbol, the info. You know what the deal is. I'm not conducting abusive concealment. Just read the instructions so you can reveal it. Not hidden, it's written. A user agreement. It seemed to me you're skipping steps. You need, you're quick to jet. You eager beeves just clicking next. Let the legalese come and grip your neck. And now it's done, won't get erased. Nowhere to hide till the end. Now I'm the ump at second base when you're sliding in those DMs. I see what you said. If the text came out your head, you're safe with me. I'll keep you here, just wait and see. Plus, you know what I want. That info. I know what you're into. I know what you've been through. I know who you are. Got that info. I got it in your car. Got that info. Man, I'm in your pocket. I hear just what you said. You thought no one was watching. I know it when you're talking. I know when you're silent. I got that info that you've been providing. That info. That info. That info. We want the info. Swollen in the lines of that info. Give us the info. It's in the cloud. That info. I'm running like we're taking the info. Info.